What are the long-term risks of taking the abortion pill that women are not told?
A potential impact on their future fertility, a 300% increased risk of preterm birth in future pregnancies. There is a significant impact on long-term mental health. Approximately 1 in 9 women will experience a severe adverse event related to these drugs, and they're not being told that.
Is it actually possible if you take the abortion pill to reverse it?
Yes, it is. If we get to a woman within 72 hours of her taking mifepristone before she takes that next drug, and we give her progesterone, you can actually outcompete the mifepristone and reverse the effects, similar to when we give Narcan to combat the effects of fentanyl, to reverse a fentanyl overdose. It's the abortion industry, actually, that has been pushing for harmful practices for women, not laws outlawing abortion. They will claim that these drugs are safer than Tylenol, that it's just like a heavy period. These are lies.
Every 49 seconds in America, another abortion happens. Not in a clinic, not in public, but quietly through the mail. Since Roe was overturned, abortions didn't disappear. They went underground. Pills are being shipped to doorsteps, bypassing doctors, bypassing safeguards, and leaving women to bleed alone in their bathrooms. Today, we're exposing what no other health and wellness podcast will cover: the physical risks, the environmental impact of fetal tissue and blood being flushed down the toilet and into our water supply, and how the abortion pill industry harms all women. To discuss the topic with me is Dr. Christina Francis, board-certified OBGYN and CEO of the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Watch this jaw-dropping episode on the Real Alex Clark YouTube channel or Culture Apothecary on Spotify. We're on a mission to heal a sick culture physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Please leave a 5-star review for us if you've ever learned something new on the show. Please welcome OBGYN and CEO of the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists, Dr. Christina Francis, to Culture Apothecary. Since Dobbs, what changes on the ground are you seeing as an OBGYN?
When the Dobbs decision came out, I think the thing that surprised me the most, especially as a physician, was the amount of medical misinformation that was out there. In fact, the day after the Dobbs decision, I was on shift, doing a 24-hour shift at the hospital, and my cell phone was blowing up with text messages, some of them from people who were as excited as I was that Roe was overturned, but so many text messages from medical colleagues saying, is it true that we can no longer treat ectopic pregnancy? Is it true that we can no longer treat miscarriage because now abortion is going to be illegal in some places? I don't know. For me, that really caught me off guard, I think, because in no way, shape, or form had abortion been equivocated with ectopic pregnancy or miscarriage treatment before. But now that the pro-abortion side was having to defend their position, now they were sort of looping all of those actual women's healthcare issues into the abortion debate. And so that has been, I think, a real uphill battle for us since the Dobbs decision, is correcting that medical misinformation and helping people understand that women can still receive the true life-saving healthcare that they need in states where abortion is now illegal.
We keep hearing that abortion rates have dropped since Dobbs, but pill numbers are on the rise. They're really saying the opposite. So what's happening?
Well, it's hard to know exactly what's happening because there's no abortion reporting requirement in the country. So states can voluntarily report to the CDC. Guttmacher collects some data from abortion facilities, but it is hard to know exactly what's going on. But there does appear to be a trend towards more abortions since the Dobbs decision. And that's not because, at least I don't think that's because abortion has been made illegal in some places. It's because of the rise of the use of abortion pills and the way that they're being dispensed now because of the reckless decisions that the FDA made under the Biden administration to remove the in-person dispensing requirement. Now these pills are available to order online, sent through the mail. Even if you're not pregnant, you can get these pills for what they call advanced provision. So if you want them around in case you become pregnant in the future and you might want an abortion, you can get them now. And so all of this, I think, is contributing to the increasing numbers of reported abortions, and it's leading to really horrific outcomes for both preborn children and for women as well.
How has Planned Parenthood's business model shifted since surgical clinics faced restrictions after Dobbs?
Well, they've been shifting for quite some time, even before the Dobbs decision, away from surgical abortions. There's a couple reasons for that. One, there are requirements for facilities that provide surgical procedures, even though in many states, abortion facilities like Planned Parenthood have skirted those requirements and not held to the same health and safety standards as other medical facilities have. So that's one reason they would have to comply with health and safety regulations. Another reason is that most OBGYNs in this country don't want to perform abortions. In fact, it's less than about 15%, depending on what survey you look at, of OBGYNs that perform abortions. And so Planned Parenthood is having a harder time finding people to actually do surgical abortions in their facilities. And so for that reason, it's been decreasing. But also since the abortion pill was approved here in the US in 2000, we've seen the numbers dramatically increase of pill abortions, which are much easier for abortion providers to dispense because now they don't have to have an in-person visit with the woman. They can dispense them online, and they really expend very little resources and they make money on that. And so for them, it's a better business model to not have to expend the resources that they would have to for surgical abortions, but dispense these pills to women either online or at their facilities.
Are we talking about like an Amazon-style mail operation for the abortion pill?
Yes, essentially that's what it is. So there is a variety of options available to women, to young girls, to abusers. Men can get on these sites. Some of them are very much like Amazon. You get on, you tell them what state you're in, and then they tell you who the provider is that can provide these pills. Some of these websites ask health-related questions, ask questions about, are you the woman who is seeking this pill or are you someone else? Some of them legitimately, you get on, you pick what you want, you add it to your cart, you pay, and you get the pill shipped to you. No questions asked whatsoever.
What actually happens inside the body when someone takes an abortion pill?
Great question, because I think it's something that a lot of people actually don't understand. They hear the rhetoric out there that this is safer than Tylenol, that women can just do this from home. It's no big deal. But it's really important to understand what happens. So it's a 2-drug regimen, actually. The first one is called mifepristone. This drug was developed as a drug that blocks the action of a key hormone in early pregnancy called progesterone. So many women that listen to this podcast will probably know about progesterone in and out of pregnancy. Progesterone does exactly what it sounds like. It's pro-gestation. So it promotes gestation or pregnancy. So it's a very crucial hormone as that baby is developing very early in pregnancy that leads to good connections between mom and baby so that blood, oxygen, nutrients can flow freely between mom and baby. Mifepristone binds to the receptor meant for progesterone, and it blocks the action of progesterone. So I even tell people to think about it like a key that you can insert into a lock, but it doesn't turn anything. It doesn't do anything. So it's blocking that lock. So it's not letting progesterone have the action that it's meant to have. Because of that blockage of the progesterone receptor, that leads then to a stopping, essentially, of that good blood flow between mom and baby. So it leads to then baby starving to death, essentially, because those nutrients and that oxygen are not getting to baby. So that'll lead to the death of the baby in the vast majority of cases. And then the second drug that she takes is called misoprostol. Now, this is a drug that we use all the time in obstetrics. We use it for miscarriage treatment. We also use it in much smaller doses to induce labor at full term when a woman comes in and needs her labor induced. But this drug, in this case, does the same thing. It induces labor. And so it puts women into strong contractions, horrific pain. They can have horrific bleeding, and they will deliver their baby at home, oftentimes alone in their dorm room if it's a college student. That's the way that this 2-drug regimen works, is it essentially leads to starvation of the baby by disrupting that key hormone, progesterone, and then the second drug puts her into labor.
Have you you seen the abortion pill being marketed as casual and simple when the reality is like some of these women could be bleeding for hours or days?
Oh, absolutely. Again, if you go on these websites or if you listen to abortion advocates, they will claim that these drugs are safer than Tylenol, that it's just like a heavy period. Even we at the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs, we recently responded to a Medical Students for Choice post that said, just curl up on your couch with a good book and a blanket and it'll be over before you know it. These are lies that are being sold to women. And if you talk to women who've actually experienced these kinds of abortions, they will tell you a much different story.
So what are the stories that you've heard that are different than that?
So they will have really horrendous bleeding, much heavier than a period. We know that the pharmacology of the drug mifepristone actually causes a woman's uterus to bleed more because of the effect of the drug. So not just the bleeding that she's experiencing because she's losing her baby, but also the effect of the drug on the uterus itself makes it more likely to bleed more. So they'll have horrific bleeding that can last as long as a month to 6 weeks.
A month?
Yeah.
I think most women take this, they think it's about a night or maybe a weekend at most.
Right. Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
is substantial. I've never even heard that.
Yeah. No, it's really horrific, which is why women that are already anemic or have low blood counts are not supposed to take this drug anyways, because they're at risk for losing a significant amount of blood.
And here they are taking it, they're ordering it offline. There's no medical professional to tell them any of this.
Absolutely. They're not having any interaction. And I think that's actually a really important point because oftentimes when this is talked about, it's talked about as telehealth or telemed abortion. Now, I don't know what you think of when you hear that word, but when I hear telehealth, I think I'm sitting down with a doctor or at least some kind of medical professional at their computer and I'm interacting with them. I'm talking to them. They're asking me questions about my personal history, all of that. That is not what's happening. Women are having zero interaction with a medical professional through these websites. They may be answering questions, but a medical professional is not reviewing the answer to those questions, and the pills are just getting sent to them. So there's no informed consent for women. I think regardless of where somebody stands on the issue of abortion, we should all agree that all of us deserve to have full, accurate information before we make any kind of choice that will impact our health. I know that's something that you care very deeply about as well, that we should have accurate information. Women are just being sold this lie that this is safe, that it's easy, that their problem that they're facing, this unexpected, unplanned pregnancy will be over very quickly if they just take these pills. And it is wreaking havoc, of course, on the hundreds of thousands of preborn children who are losing their lives because of these drugs, but it's also wreaking havoc on women's health, both their physical and their mental health.
Have there been any cases of women bleeding out after taking the abortion pill or even dying?
Oh, absolutely. So some of our researchers at Aplog have published papers where they've looked at all of the adverse event reports that were turned into the FDA. One of the most common severe complications is severe hemorrhage requiring blood transfusions, requiring emergency surgery because of an incomplete abortion where not all of the baby is delivered and some of the baby remains inside of her uterus. And so she has to have an emergency surgery to empty her uterus and stop her bleeding. Severe infections. There's a black box warning on mifepristone, a black box warning, and yet it's being distributed online and through the mail because of severe infections. You may remember, or some of your listeners may remember, a couple of stories that came out in ProPublica, the publication ProPublica before the 2024 general election. One was about a woman named Amber Thurman from Georgia who died after taking the abortion pills. Now, of course, ProPublica tried to spin it that it was because of Georgia's abortion laws that she died, but that was not the case at all. In fact, it was because of the abortion drug. She died from a massive infection, died from multi-system organ failure, and died in the hospital. Within 24 hours of presenting to the hospital, she was dead. And it was 100% because of the abortion pills that she had taken. And we know, at least reported, there are approximately 35 deaths reported to the FDA of women because of this drug. However, I think that's likely massively underreported because women are told to lie if they go to the hospital for complications, to lie and say that they're having a miscarriage so that they don't get in trouble for having taken the abortion pills. And so we know that the complications and the deaths are likely vastly underreported because the doctors like me who are seeing women in their emergency rooms, I get called down to our emergency room, and Indiana, where abortion is illegal, I still get called down regularly to take care of women who are suffering complications from this drug.
You're a pro-life OBGYN. It's illegal in Indiana. A woman comes in, she's having complications from the abortion pill. And then what do? What actually happens to these women?
I take care of them.
Right. This is what like the mainstream media lies about. Like
Absolutely.
They think that you're calling the cops on her or something.
Right. And that's so not true. I mean, people that are saying that don't understand our ethics, the oath that we took as physicians. I took an oath to take care of every patient that comes to me and provide the best healthcare possible to every patient that comes to me. And that means even though I might disagree with the decision that she made to take those abortion pills and wish that she had made a different choice for her and for her baby, I will absolutely take care of her. You know who's not taking care of her is the anonymous provider online who shipped these dangerous pills to her. The Planned Parenthood doctors are not taking care of her. In fact, when I go down to my emergency room, it's so interesting to watch the reactions of some of the other physicians and nurses and that are down in the emergency room, some of whom I know are not pro-life because of conversations that I've had with them. But every time I go down to take care of a woman who's suffering from an abortion complication, the response is the same. They'll say, "Here's another one." Because they know what the abortionists do. They don't take care of their patients. They abandon them to their local emergency rooms, and they don't fulfill their oath that we took. You know, I, as a physician, I remember in my training, it was ingrained into my head that if I took care of a patient, if I did surgery on her, if I gave her a medication, anything, if I took care of her, she's my responsibility. So if she had a complication, that's my responsibility. That's the duty that I have to my patient. And that is a duty that every single abortionist in this country that I'm aware of is abandoning, including the ones who are dispensing these pills online. You know, the conversation around abortion often gets boiled down to this should be left to a decision between a woman and her doctor, right? How many times have you heard that? This is not a decision between a woman and her doctor. It would actually be better if that was actually happening. But women are not seeing doctors right now, especially for these abortion pills. And even when they do see them for surgical abortions, the stories that I've heard from patients that I've taken care of afterwards said, I didn't even meet the doctor until I was on the operating table ready for my abortion. They didn't even talk to me ahead of time. So this is not the kind of relationship between a patient and a doctor that I think many paint it to be.
First of all, if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, I'm wearing my zebra sweatshirt today. Picture this, though. You're doing the book talk trend with your man, okay? You know the one I'm talking about? Maybe you've got your zebra sweatshirt on yourself and you want to try this trend out you saw on TikTok. If you don't know, the book talk trend is where this guy, your husband, your boyfriend, whatever, flips his hat backwards. He's got that I'm about to kiss you energy. He leans in, arm on the wall, and then boom. He stinks. BO all over your face. The romantic moment, dead, finished, terminated. Goodbye, sexy book talk dreams. This is why you need to order him and you deodorant from Zebra. Most deodorants are loaded with aluminum, parabens, and fragrances that aren't just smelly chemicals, they're endocrine disruptors. That means they literally mess with your hormones while you're trying to live your life. High pressure work meeting, hormonal chaos. Running for the bus, hormonal chaos. Trying to make out during a viral book talk trend, complete disaster. That is why I use Zebra deodorant. Aluminum-free, paraben-free, fragrance-free. They've got a baking soda version and a without baking soda version. Personally, baking soda burns my underarms. It's bad, so I've got to use baking soda free, but Zebra deodorant goes on clear. It actually works in real-world heat and stress. You can survive errands, Zoom calls, workouts, and awkward book talk dates without your deodorant secretly attacking your endocrine system. Go to yayzebra.com, use code ALEX for 10% off. That's yayzebra.com, code ALEX for 10% off. Don't let BO or your deodorant ruin your vibe or your hormones. I wanted to buy some masa chips at Sprouts. You know, it's 1 p.m., it's middle of the day. Prime chip buying hours. Oh, can't find them. I asked the guy working there. He goes, oh yeah, we get those in the morning. By lunch, gone. Same thing with real sourdough. Same thing with raw milk. These people can't keep this stuff on the shelves. Why? Because Maha is real. The vibes have shifted. People are waking up. The consumers are in control. And here's the scam that you may not know about. Up until the 90s, all chips and fries were cooked in beef tallow. And then Big Food said, well, what if we just do something cheaper, cut corners? They switched to seed oils. Unfortunately, that poisoned everybody. So now seed oils make up about 20% of the average American's daily calories, and studies link them to inflammation and metabolic issues. Truly shocking. Nobody saw this coming, using chemical sludge, except, well, everybody else. So Masa decided to do something different about it, and this is why they can't stay on the shelves. They made a tortilla chip with 3 ingredients: organic, nixtamalized corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. No seed oils, none, zero. And the best part is they taste incredible. They are the best tortilla chip I have ever had. These chips don't snap in half and drown in your guac like a weak little tech bro chip. When you eat Masa, you feel satisfied, light, energetic, no crash, no bloat, no laying on the couch questioning your life choices. And because of the beef tallow, you don't black out and eat the entire bag like a raccoon. My favorite flavor is blue corn, elite, presidential. Go to masachips.com. Use code RealAlexClark for 25% off your first order. That's masachips.com. Code RealAlexClark, okay? Or don't order online. Masa's now at Sprouts nationwide. Just go early because by lunch, they're gone. What are the short-term risks doctors are seeing most often in women that take the abortion pill?
Yeah, so the biggest ones are going to be hemorrhage or really heavy bleeding where they might need a blood transfusion. Infection. I've treated patients that had to be admitted to the hospital with multiple IV antibiotics to treat their severe infections. Incomplete abortion, so where they don't pass all of the baby and there's tissue left behind that they need to have an emergency surgery for. And those are, I would say, the most common ones that we see. I think the other important thing to know, though, that we're seeing is undiagnosed ectopic pregnancies. Ectopic pregnancy is where the baby implants somewhere outside of where it's supposed to. So it's supposed to implant in the cavity of the woman's uterus. And when it implants elsewhere, it causes problems. The most common location is in the fallopian tube. The reason that's a problem is because the fallopian tube isn't designed to expand and grow with that growing baby. And so as the baby grows, it can cause the tube to rupture and cause life-threatening bleeding in a woman's abdomen. In fact, it's the number one cause still of death in the first trimester of pregnancy is a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. And I've taken care of hundreds of women with ectopic pregnancies, and they truly are life-threatening, need to be treated as an emergency. The problem that we're seeing with especially with the way the abortion drugs are dispensed now, is that women are not being diagnosed as to whether or not they have an ectopic pregnancy or not before they get these drugs. These drugs don't treat ectopic pregnancies, which occur in 1 in 50 pregnancies. This is not uncommon. 1 in 50 is very common. And the symptoms of a rupturing ectopic pregnancy are abdominal pain and vaginal bleeding. The problem with that is that the symptoms a woman experiences with a chemical abortion are abdominal pain and vaginal bleeding. And so she'll be told, you're going to have pain, you're going to have bleeding. That's normal. Don't worry about it. And if she has an ectopic pregnancy that she doesn't know about and she starts having those symptoms, she's going to think, this is normal. They told me to expect this. And she's going to stay at home. Those minutes or hours that she stays at home while she's bleeding into her abdomen literally are the difference between life and death for her. And so there are documented deaths after women took mifepristone, the abortion drug, from an undiagnosed ectopic pregnancy that then ruptured. I have a colleague, another APLOG member, who has taken care of multiple women in this situation in the state of Florida, again, where abortion is supposed to be illegal, one of whom had to have multiple surgeries due to complications related to this and lost her future fertility options. She had to lose her uterus and had no chance of having children in the future. This is the very real toll that is happening to women from these drugs. Again, not even to mention the mental health toll.
Pro-abortion people may say, Dr. Francis, this is why we should have kept abortion legal. Then you wouldn't have women needing the chemical abortion pills. But are abortion providers really held to the same safety standards as hospitals?
They're not. And in fact, they were using the abortion pills as essentially chemical coat hangers well before the Dobbs decision. The drug was approved in 2000. In 2016, the FDA started, under the Obama administration, started to remove essential safeguards. They expanded the use of this drug drug to 10 weeks of pregnancy from 7 weeks, even knowing that that was going to lead to significantly more complications for women. They removed the in-person follow-up visits, meaning women who had complications, the abortion providers did not have to see them for follow-up to screen for those complications. And at the same time that they did all of that, knowing that this was going to cause more complications, they also said, oh, you no longer have to report all complications to us, only deaths. So now they're not collecting data on complications anymore. Then fast forward to the Biden administration in 2021. Again, this is pre-Dobbs, before the Dobbs decision. The Biden administration, the FDA under Biden, removed that in-person dispensing requirement, allowing then for these drugs to be dispensed online and through the mail. This is what's harming women. It wasn't because abortion was made illegal. It was because of this expanded, unfettered access to these very dangerous drugs that even under the most controlled of circumstances have a 4 times higher complication rate than surgical abortions. And that's when women are getting ultrasounds, they're being seen in person, all of that, they still have a much higher complication rate. So it's the abortion industry actually that has been pushing for harmful practices for women, not laws outlawing abortion. And I think the other way that we can know that is look at the vast majority of OBGYNs. Again, somewhere between 86 and 93% of OBGYNs that don't do abortions as part of our practice. I've been in practice for more than 20 years. I've never performed an abortion. And I don't have women that have died unnecessarily or, from preventable causes that I could have intervened and saved their lives. If abortion was truly needed, if induced abortion was truly needed to save women's lives, then we would see all of us who don't do abortions, we would have a line of dead women behind us. That's not the case. We can provide excellent healthcare to all women without abortion. They don't need it.
Who's profiting the most from the abortion pill?
Oh, well, certainly the abortion industry, people who are peddling these pills because it's pure profit for them. I mean, the drug itself costs very little. And yet when you go online, you see them making anywhere from just under $100 to $200 to $300 per packet of pills. So they're certainly profiting. The abortion industry's allies within the medical community, I think, are likely profiting from this as well. And
what do you mean?
So the American College of OBGYNs is a professional society who claims to represent all OBGYNs across the country. And they are all in on the abortion pill and on the abortion agenda. They have pushed for no regulations over the abortion pill. They actually sued the FDA back in 2020 to get that in-person dispensing requirement removed under COVID. One of the most ridiculous things when the COVID pandemic broke out, for those of us who are physicians who were taking care of women on labor and delivery, and we had women come in who were sick with COVID, we're trying to figure out how do we best take care of our patients. You would think that we could look to this group, the American College of OBGYNs, ACOG, who claims to be the standard-setting organization for OBGYNs, to give us guidance. What do we do? How do we take care of these patients? Nothing. Their first statement out during COVID was about how abortion access had to be protected at all costs under the COVID pandemic, when cancer surgeries weren't happening, when we weren't allowing women's husbands to be on labor and delivery with them when they delivered their babies. They didn't care about any of that. All they cared about was abortion access. And that's just indicative of their entire position on this issue.
Would ACOG feel comfortable, in your opinion, pushing for no restrictions on any other prescription pill?
Oh, I think they absolutely would. Unless it serves their political agenda, then they wouldn't. But, on abortion in particular, ACOG has complete blinders on. They have bought into the ideology, not the science. They ignore good, sound scientific evidence to push their ideology of, and this is their words, not mine, no barriers, no restrictions, no regulations for abortion. One example, so they have advocated that ultrasound and in-person visits are medically unnecessary before women get these drugs, even though we know that the farther along in pregnancy she is when she takes these pills, the higher the risk of complications for her. So they've said, no, women know how far along they are based on their last menstrual period. You don't need to have an ultrasound ultrasound, you don't need to have an in-person visit. That's their statement when it comes to abortion and the abortion pills. However, when you look at their guidance for women who actually want their pregnancies about how is best to date a pregnancy, that document says that up to 50% of women will be wrong about how far along they are based on their last period, and that any pregnancy not dated by an ultrasound should be considered suboptimally dated, meaning you don't actually know how far along they are.
What's with this contradiction, you think?
They want to push abortion above all else. And, it's really sad to me. So the organization that I lead, APLOG, the American Association of Pro-Life OBGYNs, we actually started as a special interest group within ACOG back in 1973 because the leadership of ACOG, which previously had been actually relatively neutral on the issue of abortion and saw abortion as an attempt to fix a social problem, actually something that really didn't have a role in medicine, they filed pro-abortion amicus briefs in both the Roe v. Wade and the Doe v. Bolton cases. And when that happened, many of their members saw that the leadership was becoming much more pro-abortion. Their members were largely pro-life. And so they said, we need to form a special interest group within ACOG to ensure that a pro-life presence stays within ACOG. We became their largest special interest group and stayed that way until 2013 when they dissolved the title of special interest group. We think probably to get rid of us, but we don't know that for sure. But then we became a separate organization. We had 2,000 members at that time in 2013. We now are at 8,000 members. So we're growing significantly. And I think a lot of that is because so many people have seen the way ACOG has just continued their push to promote abortion above good medicine and good science and ignore the evidence of the harms to women, ignore the preborn child completely. In fact, they recently changed their logo, which was a mom holding her baby, and took the mom and baby out of their logo completely. I think that is indicative of where they have moved as an organization and that they care about these political issues or issues that have been politicized, at least like abortion, so much more than they care about actual healthcare being delivered to women in a safe way.
What are the long-term risks of taking the abortion pill that women are not told?
I think that there are probably some that we're not even aware of, but the ones that we are aware of are a potential impact on their future fertility because of if they get an infection or the more times that a woman has to have her uterus instrumented. So if she has to have a surgical completion of her abortion, that increases her risk of potentially not being able to get pregnant in the future. We also know that those women that start their abortions medically or with those drugs and then have to complete them surgically have a 300% increased risk of preterm birth in future pregnancies. So, let's say a woman is in a situation now where she's pregnant, she's not ready to be a mom, so she decides to take these pills, but many women want to become pregnant in the future. Then fast forward to a future pregnancy, they're at risk for very preterm birth in future pregnancies. So babies born at 24, 26 weeks, where now, hopefully they can survive, but they may have long-term health problems, or maybe she delivers at 21 weeks before the baby can survive. So it's impacting the health of her future children as well. We also know that there is a significant impact on long-term mental health. So significantly increased risk of suicide, depression, substance abuse, anxiety, PTSD, things like that.
Do women typically receive informed consent about this?
No, absolutely not. I mean, even if they see an abortion provider in an abortion facility, from my experience talking to patients, I'll share one patient's experience with you that she shared with me. She had gone to a Planned Parenthood facility. This was before Dobbs, so this was a Planned Parenthood facility in Indiana. She had gone there. Her counseling was done in a group setting with a bunch of other women. And she was like, I was embarrassed enough to be there that I was making this decision. Then I had to be in this room with all these other women. And she said, we were told that we could ask questions, but I wasn't about to ask a question in front of all of those other women. There's no way. I was already embarrassed. So that was the kind of informed consent that they received. They're also told that this drug is safe, that it's effective, all of the sort of tropes that we hear, when in fact, again, we know, according to some recent insurance claims data that was reviewed, approximately 1 in 9 women will experience a severe adverse event related to these drugs. And they're not being told that. So they don't get informed consent even when they're seen in person, but certainly not when they're getting onto these websites. Again, one of the websites you just get on, add it to your cart. They don't tell you anything.
I I used to eat Dunkaroos and Sunny Delight for breakfast. Yeah, I know. I was a 90s kid living my best neon sugar and neon ketchup life. Fast forward to now, I'm in my 30s and I'm spreading pesticide-free Beekeeper's Naturals honey with royal jelly on organic sourdough bread like some kind of wellness guru. This is the 90s kid to crunchy millennial pipeline and I am the queen of it. Here's the thing, most honey out there, it's loaded with pesticides. In the US, bees are exposed to a cocktail of chemicals that not only harm them, but sneak into the honey that we eat. You think you're eating sweet golden goodness? Probably not. You're eating a little chemical science experiment. And that's why pesticide-free honey isn't just a treat, it's actually protecting your health. And the royal jelly that the Beekeeper's Naturals honey is infused with, oh my word, that is what nurse bees feed the queen. It's packed with proteins, amino acids, and bioactive compounds that support immunity, energy, and overall wellness. It's basically nature's multivitamin straight from the hive. Eating this honey every day from Beekeeper's Naturals is the ultimate health hack during cold and flu season. And of course, I keep that Beekeeper's Naturals Propolis throat spray on me. Propolis is what bees use to protect their hives from germs. For me, it is daily immune support, antioxidants, and germ defense, all in one little spray, all part of my immune system daily hygiene routine. If you want in on this, go to beekeepersnaturals.com, code Alex Clark for 20% off. That's beekeepersnaturals.com, code Alex Clark for 20% off. My friend's niece gives birth. Everything goes by the book. The hospital is in network. The doctor says it should be fine. Weeks later, out of nowhere, they're handed a $30,000 bill because the hospital's birthing center wasn't covered. They were told to appeal. Then they were told to appeal again, and then they were charged interest, all while trying to just care for a newborn baby. It sounds surreal, but it happens often. People doing everything right and still getting denied by a system that is supposed to protect them and their newborn. That's exactly why I loved interviewing Andy and learning from him. He's the CEO from Crowd Health, and we have seen an uptick in listeners signing up for Crowd Health because they're just exhausted with denial after denial. If you're in that season where pregnancy is on your mind or already happening, you're realizing fast that the way you want to have a baby doesn't always line up with what insurance allows. With Crowd Health, pregnancy is treated as a single health event. Prenatal, labor and delivery, and postpartum all together with a member commitment of just $3,000. Now, compare that to the $30,000 that my friend's niece had to spend. No piecing things together, no guessing what's included, and you get to choose how you want to deliver your baby. Hospital, birth center, or home birth. Crowd Health also allows eligible funding for things insurance won't often cover. Certified birth doulas, licensed midwives, pelvic floor therapy, lactation support, breast pumps, even necessary home birth supplies. It's a model where members fund one another directly, human, transparent, and aligned with the kind of care that most women actually want during pregnancy and postpartum. You have the power to take control of your healthcare. Join Crowd Health to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months using code CULTURE at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Join crowdhealth.com, code CULTURE. When women are ordering the abortion pill online, where are the pills coming from?
So sometimes they're coming from pharmacies here in the US. I think it depends on if they live in a state where abortion is illegal, then oftentimes they're coming from pharmacies outside of the US, which also then raises questions about what is in the drug. You know,
Right.
how we have no control over what is in them. There was a study that was done several years ago that ordered these pills from various pharmacies all over the world and found varying levels of the active ingredient in them, some contaminants as well. I mean, of course, there's no quality control, right, over these pills when they're being produced in other countries. I think we could probably argue what kind of quality control is there when they're being produced even, and distributed from pharmacies here in the U.S. But that's just the thing. She has absolutely no idea where exactly that drug is coming from and what sort of quality controls are in place over that drug either.
Are these women given legitimate FDA-approved dosing instructions with the pills?
It depends on where she's getting them from. We've done some digging on some of these sites, and some of them that you go to are very clearly coming from pharmacies overseas. The drugs that are coming have names that are completely different. And so there's no way of knowing if, like you said, if the dose that they're getting is even the appropriate dose that they're supposed to be getting. One site that we found would send you 14 pills of that second drug of misoprostol, which are much larger doses than any one person should be being given. And there's side effects that come along with taking really large doses of misoprostol. They can get horrible diarrhea. They could have fevers. They could have even more severe consequences, especially if they have other health conditions. So as you said, there's no control. And again, I want to make the point that even people that think that abortion should be legal or that think that women should have the right to choose to have an abortion should agree that this is medical malpractice. This is substandard care that should not be being delivered to women. This is not empowering to women. It is not actual health care. It's medical malpractice, and there really needs to be a stop to it.
Has the current FDA done any long-term safety studies on chemical abortions?
Not that we are aware of, not that they have published. Supposedly under the REMS program, the Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy. So this is a program that is applied to only really a few dozen drugs in the U.S., drugs that have the possibility for really significant side effects and complications. This is put into place to try to minimize those complications. So things like chemotherapy drugs would be part of a REMS program. Mifepristone is part of the REMS program. As part of that, they are supposed to be doing ongoing evaluation. And in fact, Commissioner McCary, in an interview that he did, said as part of the REMS program, ongoing evaluations are done so that if a new side effect that we didn't know about before starts to pop up, that we'll see that. But my question is, we haven't been collecting any complications other than death since 2016 on mifepristone. So how on earth would we know if a new complication has occurred?
The FDA hasn't done any strong long-term safety data on the abortion pill?
The FDA itself, no.
Is that normal?
I wouldn't think so. No. In fact, like I said, under the REMS program, it's supposed to be occurring. Now, they are saying right now that they are in the process of a thorough safety review. They've been saying that since last summer.
How long do they take?
It shouldn't take more than about a year. So we'll see. If they really started it when they said that they started it, then I would expect by this coming summer or at the latest this fall that we would have information. I think the important thing to point out with this topic in particular and the FDA, the studies that they relied upon to justify their decision to remove that in-person dispensing requirement have a lot of problems with them.
What do you mean?
So there were 5 main studies that they relied upon to make that decision to say, oh, look, telemedicine abortions are safe, so they don't have to have that in-person dispensing requirement. However, if you look at the studies they used, many of them only enrolled women who had already had blood work done at an outside facility and who had already had an ultrasound done at an outside facility.
Well, that's got to be extremely rare.
Exactly. So
most women ordering this are not doing all that.
Oh, totally. But those are the women that were enrolled in the study. So they've already hand-selected women that are going to be at the lowest risk of complications because they've had an ultrasound, they've had blood work. But as you just said, that's not what's happening in the real world right now.
What you're describing is some of the same weird stuff that we hear about when they do vaccine safety trials.
Yeah.
It's kind of fraudulent in a way.
Right. Or manipulating the data.
Yeah, manipulating the data is what I'm
absolutely,
getting at.
to show what you want it to show. And
wow.
Our current head of HHS with Robert F. Kennedy, he's aware of the issues with data manipulation, with the need for transparency in data, with the need for health and safety regulations and giving people all of the information so that they can make fully informed choices, something that I'm so supportive of. And I think it's great. And I heard, I can't remember if it was him or Commissioner McCary recently said that, the MAHA movement and HHS believes in following the science, not in following ideology. I was cheering when they said that, but then my immediate follow-up to that was, great. Now let's apply that to the abortion drug mifepristone, because that's exactly what's happened. There has been this all-out political and ideologic push to get this, available to every woman online. I think they're likely going to push for it to go over the counter at some point, which would be just another step in exactly the wrong direction that would expose women and girls to significant harm. It would be another gift to abusers, which we're already seeing forced abortions from abusers because of how easy they can get their hands on this drug. And so that's what we are asking. We led 2 different letters from 30,000 medical professionals from across the country asking HHS and FDA to immediately reinstate the in-person dispensing requirement while they're doing this thorough safety review. And then if they're not going to take it off the market, which I think that there's actually a very strong argument for why this drug should be removed from the market because of how dangerous it is to women and to babies, of course. But if they're not going to take it off the market, at the very least, to require ultrasounds and to go back to all of the original safeguards that the FDA deemed necessary in order to approve the drug.
Are safety rules looser now than they were 10 years ago?
Oh, absolutely.
How so?
There's no safety regulations right now on this drug. In 2000, when it was approved, a physician had to dispense it. Women had to have 3 in-person visits, 1 before and 2 after they took the drugs. It was only approved to 7 weeks of pregnancy, and all adverse events had to be reported to the FDA. Then in 2016, they expanded it to 10 weeks, said that anybody, any medical professional could prescribe this, so not just physicians. It didn't have to be dispensed in a healthcare facility any longer, and no adverse events had to be reported other than death. And then, of course, in 2021, they took away that last remaining in-person visit. And then in 2023, they said that your local CVS, Walgreens, your local pharmacy could now become an abortion facility, essentially, by just dispensing these drugs. So there's essentially no safety regulations left around this drug any longer.
What happens to fetal remains, placenta, and chemical waste from abortion pills?
That's another issue, is that women are being told to flush their babies down the toilet when they have an abortion and when they deliver their baby. That's a problem for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, women, when they see their babies, and I know this from talking to women who've been through this, from talking to amazing organizations that work in post-abortion care, taking care of women after they've had abortions, that women, when they see their baby, they realize what's happened. They realize the choice that they made. They realize that's their baby, that it's not just a clump of cells or a clump of tissue, and they don't want to flush their babies down the toilet. I mean, the stories that I've heard are horrific. So 1, women don't want to flush their babies down the toilet. But 2, I mean, I think it's a realistic thing that we have human tissue, blood, which is considered biohazard waste in the medical profession, is then being flushed sometimes into our water systems. And you know, I think that's a problem too.
Do wastewater treatment plants filter out abortion pill compounds?
I can't imagine that they are. I mean, we know that this is a problem with many drugs, that metabolites end up in our water supply. A lot of hormonal-based drugs, things like that, there are elevated hormone levels in our water. That's happening as well. You know, we get metabolites of the abortion drug that are likely ending up in wastewater, as well as human tissue. And again, I think we should point out that if the abortion industry truly was providing legitimate healthcare, if they were functioning as an actual healthcare provider, then they would have to abide by the same standards as other medical facilities. When I'm in the operating room, if I have a towel or a sponge that we're using during a surgery that gets even a little bit of blood on it, it has to be disposed of as biohazard waste in a special red bag and disposed of in a very particular way to limit the exposure of infectious agents, things like that, to anyone. That's the way that actual medical facilities handle this. That is not what's happening, even honestly, with surgical abortions. I mean, there's many documented cases of abortion facilities across the country who don't handle their biomedical waste in the appropriate way. But then, of course, now that we have turned women's homes, their dorm rooms, hotel rooms into abortion facilities, that's increasing this problem even more.
What do you think the physical health impacts could be of millions of Americans drinking this?
More research should be done into this because, I mean, there's a reason why we don't put biomedical waste into our water systems and into our normal trash disposal systems. And that's because of the potential exposure to infectious agents, you know, things like bacteria, things like HIV or other communicable diseases. So there's that whole consideration. But then, you know, again, I think it's a legitimate question to be asking with the easy availability of this drug and with the fact that likely somewhere between 70 and 80% of abortions in this country are now being done via these drugs. That's a lot of that drug then also potentially being in our waste system. And what impact is that having? Again, it blocks the action of progesterone. Can I say for sure that what's in our water system is blocking progesterone in other women's bodies? No, I can't say that for sure right now because we need research into that. But it's a legitimate question to be asking. And I think research needs to be done into that.
Well, and with the rise of infertility, and you're thinking of all of the different things that impact that, the things that we're eating, the things that we're drinking, environmental factors.
Right.
Wouldn't this fall into EPA territory?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's something that the EPA should be looking into. And I think you raise an important point. And again, I don't have definitive evidence that I can say that this is leading to infertility or miscarriages in women. But knowing how the drug works and knowing that we're seeing an increased rate of infertility, as you said, which is multifactorial. There's so many things that are impacting women's fertility, increasing miscarriage rates too. This should be taken into consideration when we're looking into root causes of these things. And we should be asking these questions. And research should be funded to look into this because it's a massive public health issue. Again, regardless of someone's stance on the issue of abortion, when it's occurring at this rate and it's this common, it is something that we should be looking into as a public health issue.
I'm at this dinner party cracking everyone up, telling the story of how my ex's apartment smelled like burnt scrambled eggs 24/7. And here's the kicker. He didn't even cook eggs. It just reeked. The whole place. It was so gross. It could have been its own horror attraction. Everybody's laughing, horrified. And I'm like, ladies, this is why you need a man who can actually cook and actively shops for meat that's not garbage. This is why I order my meat from Wild Pastures. This is the meat your ex never understood, honey. 100% grass-fed, pasture-raised, regenerative, American family farm meat delivered straight to your door. Beef, pork, chicken, ethical, nutrient-dense, raised properly, 100% free from hormones, antibiotics, and GMOs. And let's clear something up. Organic on a label doesn't always mean that the animals were on pasture or fed properly. Some organic meat still comes from grain-fed, stressed animals. Wild Pastures, every animal grazes freely, rotates pastures naturally, and eats the diet they were meant to eat. That is beyond organic. It's actual integrity. So while everyone else is sipping overpriced wine and nervously glancing at their quinoa, you're flexing ethical, nutrient-dense, delicious protein and never smelling like rotten scrambled eggs again. Go to wildpastures.com/Alex for 20% off for life. Plus, get an extra $15 off your first box. That's wildpastures.com/Alex for 20% off for life. Because life is too short for bad meat or ex-boyfriends with stinky, overpriced apartments. All right, picture this. You take the kids to the zoo. It's supposed to be a fun day. Lions, giraffes, maybe a slightly overpriced ice cream cone. 2 hours in, your kids are sticky, cranky, hangry like little sociopaths. The penguin exhibit smells like a wet gym sock, and your toddler just threw a churro at a flamingo. You're like, I need nutrients, I need energy, I need to survive this hell. Next time, bring Paleo Valley superfood bars. These aren't your empty calorie Instagram healthy nonsense bars that taste like cardboard with sugar sprinkles. Each bar packs over 8 superfoods, 100% grass-fed bone broth protein, nutrients for bones, muscles, blood vessels, the whole dang system. Red velvet, lemon meringue, dark chocolate chip, something delicious to actually look forward to eating while your kids scream at the zoo. You pop one of these bad boys, suddenly you're energized, you're focused, and maybe, just maybe, you survived the Tiger Tea party without crying. Head to paleovalley.com, use code ALEX for 15% off your first order. That's paleovalley.com, code ALEX for 15% off. Survive the zoo, thrive after the zoo, and remember, your main mission is to become BFFs with the panda so that you can prove they are in fact real. I know that there's a whole set of people out there that are trying to convince us that pandas are not real. They are. Is it actually possible if you take the abortion pill to reverse it?
Yes, it is, which is, I think, if we can find any kind of silver lining on the fact that more abortions are being done via this drug instead of surgery, abortion pill reversal is that silver lining. So we know that there is a huge amount of regret from women after they have an abortion in general, but especially with the pills. And I had one woman, so I'm actually a provider of abortion pill reversal. I'm part of the network of physicians who provide this life-saving treatment. And one woman that I talked to as part of that told me that when she found out that she was pregnant, it was an unplanned pregnancy. She was not ready to be a mom. It was like she was walking around in a fog. Like she just really couldn't think clearly because all she could think about was the fact that she was pregnant. She didn't know what she was going to do. And then when she took that first abortion drug, mifepristone, she said it was like, she thought, okay, crisis averted. I took care of it. But then immediately after that, she said it was like the fog lifted and all of a sudden she could think clearly again. And the moment she could think clearly, she thought, oh my goodness, what did I just do? And she regretted it and she wanted to save her baby. And so she called the abortion pill reversal hotline. So the way we can reverse this, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but it works in many cases. So we think right now with the data we have about 70% of the time, if we get to a woman within 72 hours of her taking mifepristone before she takes that next drug, and we give her progesterone. So we use a very simple biochemical principle, something called reversible competitive inhibition, which is a big word, but essentially what that means is if you give a woman a substance that is meant to block a receptor, like the progesterone receptor, you can actually outcompete that substance by giving the substance that was meant to fit into that receptor. So by giving her a lot of progesterone. So again, it's a basic biochemical principle. In the development of mifepristone, they actually showed that you could reverse it with progesterone. So if we give women progesterone, that hormone that's naturally produced in their body at doses, by the way, that are used by the infertility industry for the last 50 years to support IVF pregnancies, women with recurrent pregnancy loss. This is not a new and novel use of progesterone. And we're using the same doses that the infertility doctors use. You can actually outcompete the mifepristone and reverse the effects, similar to when we give Narcan to combat the effects of fentanyl, to reverse a fentanyl overdose. It's the exact same principle. We give progesterone, we can save those babies. And I can tell you, having had some successful reversals and actually getting to deliver one of those babies that we saved, it was the most amazing delivery I think I've ever done, knowing that that baby had been snatched from death through just a very simple thing like giving natural progesterone. And so that has led to saving, I think now the number is somewhere around 7,000 babies across the world. There are doctors in other countries that are doing this as well. And it really is an amazing hope to be able to give to women who regret their abortion decision, but also to be able to try to save their babies.
For women who are facing unplanned pregnancies, what other options and alternatives exist for her?
I think this is something that women, again, oftentimes aren't told to, certainly if they're going to an abortion facility. They are being sold one option, which is abortion. But, I think that there are so many other options available to her that are not only life-saving for her child, but also that are empowering for her. I mean, as a woman, I find it honestly very demeaning that people are telling women that the only way to be successful in life or to pursue their goals or to be able to take care of the children they already have is to end the life of the child that is inside of them. It's very demeaning. It's not supportive of women. And I believe very strongly in empowering women, not only with information, but with real support and real choices. And so some of the things that are available for women are to parent their child and give her support for parenting her child. We know that the majority of women who chose abortion said that had they had support, they would have made a life-saving decision for their child. And the one person actually who could make the biggest difference in her choosing life for her child is the father of that baby. Women want dads to be involved and men need to step up to the plate and be involved. So that's one thing. Obviously, the best thing for a child is to be raised by his or her two biologic parents. So I think parenting support, and oftentimes women can get that through our amazing network of pregnancy centers that exist in this country, many of whom are members of my organization. We do all that we can to help support them.
I mean, they are helping women find jobs, get cars, sometimes housing, all the things you need for a nursery.
Absolutely.
Even maternity clothing for mom and all sorts of things. I mean, it is above and beyond.
Yes.
And most people do not even know that that's possible.
They're oftentimes accused of you just care about women until they give birth. And then after that, you don't care about them. Anybody who says that has never been to a pregnancy center, never talked to anyone who's involved. Oftentimes their support goes well into the child's toddler years. As you said, helping them get established, get on their feet, find a job, get education, things like that. There are maternity homes that are around this country as well that will house women who need housing during their pregnancy and beyond until they can get on their feet. And then, of course, there's the option of adoption as well, that if for whatever reason she feels that she can't parent that child, that she can give her child a chance at life with a family who so desperately wants a child and will care for that child.
And we actually don't have enough babies that are able to be adopted in America.
Right. There are
people
huge
get
waiting
confused
lists
with foster care.
Yes. So many children that are in foster care aren't actually eligible for adoption.
Right. They're trying to be reunited with their parents.
Reunited with their parents. And this is something that I think can unite people across both sides of the aisle on this issue is we have a broken foster care system that needs a lot of work and a lot of improvement. And there are many children that are suffering because of how broken our foster care system is. But when you only offer abortion as the solution for our broken foster care system, it leads to, I think, intellectual laziness that nobody really wants to put their heads together and do the hard work of figuring out what is needed to fix the foster care system. By the way, I think that abortion has led to laziness in the medical profession too. When your singular answer for any medical complication in pregnancy is abortion, it really limits and stifles medical innovation. Those who are promoting abortion like ACOG and like the abortion industry are stuck in the science of 50 years ago when Roe v. Wade was decided. We want to be on the cutting edge of science, on scientific advancements, on advancements in the care of pregnancy complications. But that doesn't happen when all you're doing is recommending abortion. I got a little bit off topic there, but I think it's an important point to make.
It's extremely important.
Innovation in societal issues, in medicine are really stifled when the only option that we're giving women is you can end your pregnancy and that'll make things better for you, which of course we know it doesn't.
There are headlines that the Trump administration has been restoring funding to Planned Parenthood. Is that true?
Well, it's a complicated issue. So certainly we saw with the One Big Beautiful Bill that Planned Parenthood was defunded for a year. I mean, that was historic. That hasn't happened before. It's been fought for very hard in the past and hasn't happened. That defunding that occurred was for Medicaid funding. So Medicaid reimbursements will no longer go to Planned Parenthood or other abortion providers, at least for the year. Again, huge win. That's hundreds of millions of dollars every year that Planned Parenthood won't be getting, and Planned Parenthoods have closed because of that. I just found out recently that they actually dropped their lawsuit against the Trump administration over that defunding. So now that defunding will be allowed to stand, which is amazing. There was something that happened recently where other federal funds were restored to Planned Parenthood, and that was under the Title X program, which is the family planning program. The Trump administration had actually paused that funding because of to any organizations that were pushing DEI initiatives, and they were sued. And my understanding, again, I'm not an attorney, so don't take this as actual legal interpretation, but my understanding from what I've read about that was that the Trump administration actually saw that they were going to lose that lawsuit. And if that happened, it would have actually made it harder for them to defund Planned Parenthood in the future. And so what they did was they removed that pause on funding. And so that funding then was restored. But that was separate from what was removed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And it sounds like they actually did it so that they could go after Planned Parenthood harder in the future, which certainly our hope is that they would do that, because Planned Parenthood is not a healthcare organization. They don't deserve that funding.
Do you think that we're going to look back on this era of the abortion pill and see it as a public health failure?
100%. When all of this started happening and ACOG was promoting the removal of that in-person visit and, no need for ultrasound, no need for labs, anything like that, I had a discussion with one of my pro-choice colleagues, and I said, tell me what you would do if a woman called you and she said she was pretty sure she was having a miscarriage, she's having a little bit of bleeding, and would you just call her in some medication to help her finish her miscarriage? Would you call that in for her without seeing her, without doing any lab work, without doing an ultrasound? And she said, absolutely not. I said, why not? And she said, well, that'd be so dangerous. There's so many things we have to look for. And I said, exactly. Do you know that that's what ACOG is advocating for with the abortion pill? And she was dumbfounded. She said, why on earth would they advocate for that? It's so dangerous. I said, you're exactly right. So this is an absolute public health failure. We are causing, I think, mental trauma that we will not know the depth of it for years to women. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the hundreds of thousands of children who are losing their lives because of this drug every year. We also are getting more and more stories of women with abortions forced upon them by their abusive husbands, their partners, their traffickers, that are obtaining these drugs online and spiking their drinks or their food with it and causing an abortion. Again, I'm going to go back to no matter where you stand on the issue of abortion, we should all be opposed to forced abortions, abortions to women who don't want them. And, I find it very interesting that this is being allowed by our society. It's being advocated for by our society, by our major institutions right now. The FDA has yet to take significant action on this. And it has to do with women. Yet again, women's health is sort of being, I think, subjugated to, we're not going to take as much look into this. I have to wonder if it was impacting more than just women, if we would be taking it seriously. So I think women's rights groups, people that are advocating for women to have better access to healthcare, they should be with us on this and demanding better care for women.
If you could offer one remedy to heal a sick culture, physically, emotionally, or spiritually, what would it be?
The organization that I represent is not a religious organization, but I personally am a Christian. I'm a believer. And, I think ultimately at its heart, what we need for healing is we need to come back to an understanding of who we are as human beings, that we are image bearers of God, that we are created in his image, and that we were put on this earth to love others, but also to reflect him to others. That would be my one fix, honestly, for everything, because I think if we could return to that, it would fix everything.
Yep.
But, if there are people that are watching or listening to this that are not believers, I would say to them that I think that the one thing that would actually go a very long way in fixing a lot of our society's ills is if we could just return to understanding that every single human being on this planet, whether they be born or preborn, every single human being has equal dignity, worth, and value. And if we could just see that and treat every person as being equal in value and worth, I actually think that would go a long way. Abortion would end. So many other things would end if we could really, truly see one another as truly equal, regardless of our level of ability, regardless of our age, our level of development, any of that. I think that would go a long way to fixing our ills.
How can women work with you to be their OBGYN if they live in Indiana?
Well, now I work as an OB hospitalist, so unfortunately I don't see patients in the office anymore.
Sad.
But it's funny that you bring that up because so many women actually are looking for a pro-life OBGYN. So we actually on our website have a physician directory where people can go and look up by their state and see where there's a pro-life OB near them.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
I know my audience is going to love that resource.
It's the most visited part of our website. I will say this though, because I think this is another issue for people to be aware of. If you live in a state that is very hostile towards pro-life physicians, you may find that there are not a lot of physicians listed for your state. It's not because we don't have members in your state. It is because they are afraid to list themselves publicly because they face the potential loss of their job or other significant blowback. And so that is another issue that we're working on as an organization, is to empower people to understand why it's important that potential patients know that they are pro-life. We fight for the conscience rights of our members, for their legal rights and protections. But I just want to give that caveat. So if someone's looking up for a physician in their state and they don't find one, don't be discouraged. It doesn't mean that they're not there. But also if there's physicians listening to this, it's important for them to know this is what women want. They want an OBGYN who they know is going to fight for both them and their baby, regardless of the circumstances.
And what's the website for that?
It's aaplog.org.
We'll put that in the show notes as well. Dr. Francis, you are a legend. Thank you for coming on Culture Apothecary.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here, Alex.
Not being hyperbolic at all, this episode could save lives. Despite what pro-abortion advocates say and stereotype us as, I think it's pretty clear who actually cares about women's health. Please share this episode everywhere that you can. Leave us a 5-star review to celebrate the important work done by my team, all the people that work on booking my guests and getting them here to film in person, to the editors who work on the show and the videographers who are filming it and have to stand there for hours sweating while I'm filming. We really appreciate them. And so we'd love to see it with a 5-star review. New episodes come out every Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, anywhere you get your podcasts. This content is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional regarding any questions or decisions related to your health or medical care. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Culture Apothecary.